Fuck me blind and call me Patricia. It's an ergonomic keyboard that I don't hate. Hello and welcome to this review of my Dygma Raise 2 keyboard. This is the final installment of the ergo block of keyboard reviews. There'll be more ergo reviews in the future, of course, but for now I'm switching back to normal for a bit, if only to try and regain what little is left of my sanity. Anyway, this was sent in by Dygma themselves. They originally wanted to send me a different model, but when I mentioned I wasn't very ergonomically proficient, they told me they'd send me this one instead, which is a bit closer to a traditional keyboard. The other one, the Defy, is pretty similar, but it has column stagger and is more reliant on thumb buttons and layers. Now, perhaps it is because this is a more accessible model, or because by now I've had a few months of ergo practice, but I actually had a somewhat tolerable time with this keyboard. Some negatives here and there, mainly due to personal preference, but overall this is probably the nicest time I've ever had with an ergonomic keyboard. And before you say I just had it flat and stuck together like this, which admittedly I have done on some other models, nope, I had it fully split and even tented. Yeah, look at me braving the perils of ergonomic human interface devices like a champion. It can tent up to 60 degrees, which is this much. I just used it at 10, though I think that's already fairly brave, frankly. I mean, 10 degrees doesn't sound like a lot, and I'm using a pretty high camera angle here, so it doesn't probably look like that much either, but it's higher than you think. It works using these flap-out, hook-in feet, and these two here are stabilizers. Basically, it's got a bunch of notches in a track on each of the sides with a listed amount of degrees for each tenting angle. Simple but intuitive. Just remember to flip out these two or they're not going to work, hence why they attach these little labels here telling you what to do. Okay, so I was going to demonstrate how, despite this setup looking rather flimsy, you can exert quite a lot of force on this without breaking it, but I did eventually, unfortunately, break it. So it is slightly unstable on this side now. As you can see, this foot has gone kind of rogue. Maybe I can get a replacement for it or something. And honestly, during usage, I had nothing of this sort happen to me. It was really just when I was pushing it to its limits that it broke. So yeah, it's not exactly invulnerable, but I was surprised at how well it held up under the force I exerted on it. It weighs just over 1.1 kilos, or in imperial units,
500 slices of cheese on a pizza!
It's got a black anodized brushed aluminium top plate, which together with the floating switch design makes it look a bit like a Corsair keyboard. And as looks are one of the things Corsair keyboards are actually kind of good at, I think that's not a bad thing. We're not using this splitter here. The two halves can communicate to each other when pressed together using this connection here. It's also got rod and tube fasteners to piece them together when used as a single part. This is exactly the same setup as the ultimate hacking keyboard I reviewed earlier, and in fact this is quite similar to it in many ways. So if this is a keyboard you're interested in, you might want to check out the UHK as an option as well. Now, to be perfectly clear, I didn't really like using this per se. The tenting tends to hurt my lower arms when I type for longer periods of time, such as when writing this script, and the lack of dedicated F and especially arrow keys was kind of annoying. So I brought in my, by now already trusty Keychron Q0 Max, which still had arrow keys programmed into it from a previous keyboard I used it with. But I did manage to use this for a full week, and, other than this macro pad, without the use of a backup keyboard, which might be a first for ergonomic keyboards. In fact, I even used it for gaming, and with that it didn't hurt at all. So, all in all, I guess that's high praise for the Raise. If I'm brutally honest, the thing I liked about it the most was the RGB, especially this light ribbon around it, which you can fully customize by the way, including recoloring different LEDs in it to different colors. But I really like this default teal color a lot. I used to use a very similar color on the LED strips in my living room too, and because I used it while tinted, you can see the underglow very well. Now, in my defense, you can tell it to use the underglow to indicate which layer you're operating in, so I guess it has some functionality, and maybe that's an excuse for me to pretend that I'm not a total pleb. By the way, this is the controlling software called Base Core. It's okay, I don't mind it too much. I like the neonness of the look, but everything you do, even recording macros, you have to save. It doesn't update anything automatically, which is a bit annoying. I much prefer programs that just apply and save everything you do immediately. This feels very cumbersome. I guess it is intuitive enough though. I didn't have to look up how to use it at all, so that's a plus at least. Now, one thing I wanted to show in this program is the ability to bind multiple different inputs to one key. Now, that's not a new thing. In fact, it's pretty common on magnetic keyboards ever since Wooting came up with the DKS feature. But this is not a magnetic keyboard, nor is it 2 different inputs to a key, it's up to 5. And the way they did it is not by using different stroke depths, as this is not an analog keyboard, so they couldn't do that anyway, but by using different input patterns. You can have tap, hold, tap and hold, double tap and hold, and they can all be bound to different output. Interesting.
For a comma, I hold it down for 4 seconds, release it for 2, and then rat-a-tat-tat.
They also pointed out to me that you can use this to gain back the arrow keys without losing the functionality of the modifier keys. Basically, you program the arrow keys over here somewhere as press keys while making the modifiers hold only. Now, frankly, this isn't quite the same, and if you want to use up the modifier keys only, you need to program it here, which is really not a great layout for arrow keys. It's a way to make the most out of a bad situation, but really, I just want some fucking arrow keys on my keyboard. Now, stupidly enough, I did try to update the keyboard's firmware, which of course completely broke the keyboard, but that happens so often to me, I'm not even surprised anymore by this point, but they did help me out and now it works again. Honestly, I don't know why it is, but I think half the firmware updates I've tried on keyboards result in me bricking them. I guess updates just hate me or something. The switches in this one are Kailh BOX White, although they have a wide selection of switches on offer and it's hot swappable. I like them though, nothing wrong with some good old box whites, but you can stick on whatever you want of course. The keycaps are double shot PBT, but for non-English layouts it's apparently laser ablated keycaps, which I'm going to assume will be ABS instead, and those cost extra. Now, double shot PBT is very durable, but these are still quite cheap looking to be honest. I think this is a sort of set you can buy online for almost nothing. I'm sure I've already seen this set on a bunch of keyboards I reviewed previously. It lets the backlight through in a really splotchy way, especially on the thinner legends. I mean, at least it's not stenciled, but this is definitely a part where they saved on production costs, I think. The wrist pads I really like, they're soft and comfortable, plus they're also magnetic. You can normally go for your own wrist rests, of course, but for a keyboard with built-in tenting options like this, I think it's important that the keyboard comes with some sort of included wrist support functionality. Finally, we come to the price. It's $370, which is not exactly cheap, but in its defense, it's not orders of magnitude away from what you pay for other ergonomic keyboards, especially highly adjustable ones like this. However, $370 won't get you this keyboard. If you want the wireless option, that's $90 extra. The cool RGB underglow, it's $80. Oof. And the built-in tenting, another $80. So that's $620 for this keyboard. Quite a sum. Now, that does include shipping, but that still makes it one of the most expensive models in one of the most expensive segments of the whole market. Now, like I said, I had a much better time with this than with most ergonomic keyboards, and if I ever decide to go ergo, I'll probably at least start off with this one. But if you don't get your keyboards in for free like I do, I think I would find this price a pretty tough cookie to swallow. That's it for this review. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.